Viktor Gyökeres just had one of the most insane seasons we've seen in years. 54 goals, 13 assists, top scorer in Portugal, and yet no offers, no transfer, no move, nothing. This isn't just surprising, it's frustrating. It's confusing and, honestly, it's disrespectful. But why is this happening to Gyokeres, and which team should he move to? This is why it sucks to be in Gyokeres' shoes right now. Viktor Gyökeres wasn't supposed to be that guy. Let's be honest, 2 years ago, his name wasn't on anyone's radar outside of Coventry fans and maybe a few championship followers. He wasn't some teenage wonder kid hyped up from age 17. He wasn't backed by a PR machine. He wasn't even seen as a top 5 league striker. He was just doing his thing quietly, and then everything changed. The moment he arrived at Sporting, something clicked. And I'm not talking about a decent season or some promising run of form, but this season he went God mode. I'm talking about numbers that force you to stop and go, wait, what? In the Portuguese league, Gyokeres played 33 matches, scored 39 goals and added 8 assists. That's 47 goal contributions in the league alone, more than 1 per game. That kind of output hasn't been normal since the Messi-Ronaldo peak era, and even then, they were doing it in La Liga, not a league where people expect lower numbers. He didn't just score a lot, he dominated, week after week. And then the Champions League. This is where most strikers from outside the top 5 leagues tend to get exposed, but not Gyokeres. He scored 6 goals in 8 Champions League matches against higher level opposition, in a system that didn't always favour him, and in a campaign where Sporting didn't even escape the group stage. That's the kind of performance that should have screamed to big clubs, this guy is the real deal. But here's the kicker, the season didn't stop there. Across all competitions, Gyokeres finished with 54 goals and 13 assists in 52 games. That's 67 total goal contributions in one season. Not a fluke, legit goals, legit impact every single week. And yet, it's not just about the numbers. The way he plays, the strength, the pressing, the timing of his runs, the hold-up play, the acceleration in the final third, it all screams elite-level striker. He wasn't just scoring, he was leading. He was dragging defenders around, creating space, punishing teams with every little mistake. He became the type of player you build your system around. You look at all that and think, surely he's already gone by now, right? Surely someone snapped him up. But no, and that's where things start getting complicated. You see, not every player with good stats is a good player. Sometimes numbers lie, but in Gyokeres' case, the stats don't even tell the full story. If you've watched him, and I mean watched him, you'll know what I mean. He's not just scoring goals, he's doing it with a level of control, intelligence, and physicality that makes him completely different from your average striker. First off, his movement is elite. It's not flashy, but it's sharp. He knows how to make those diagonal runs behind defenders. He knows when to drop deep and drag a centre-back out of position, and he's constantly scanning, not just for space, but for where the next pass is going to be. That's the part of his game people overlook. He's not just reactive, he's proactive, 2 steps ahead of the defender. And then there's his physicality. He's a tank, but not in a clumsy way. He's strong on the ball, he can shrug off defenders, and when he's running at you, he's hard to stop. You can't bully him, and you can't outrun him either. That's rare. Most strikers either have strength or speed. Gyokeres has both, and he knows how to use them in tight spaces, especially inside the box. Technically, he's clean. He can carry the ball from deep, beat a man if needed, and keep possession under pressure. His first touch is solid, his passing in transition is underrated, and his finishing, it's cold. Left foot, right foot, headers. He's efficient in all areas. It's not just tap-ins. Some of the goals he scored last season were straight-up strikers' goals, one-touch finishes, volleys, solo runs. He showed the full catalogue. But what stands out is his work rate without the ball. He presses like he's on a mission. Whether it's the 10th minute or the 90th, he's chasing down defenders, forcing mistakes, and winning possession in dangerous areas. That's the kind of mentality coaches love. He's not waiting for the game to come to him, he's going after it. And in modern football, that's gold. You take all that, the physicality, the intelligence, the goals, the pressing, the consistency, and you've got a striker who fits into multiple systems, can adapt to different styles, and gives you goals with real impact, not just numbers, goals that matter. So again, how is it possible that a striker like this, with elite level output and elite level qualities, still hasn't been signed by a top club? This is where things start to get frustrating. It's not about his quality anymore, it's about everything off the pitch. Money, negotiations, politics. This is the part that makes no sense on the surface. A striker with 67 goal contributions in a season, still in his prime at 27 years old, Champions League proven, physically elite, mentally sharp, no injury problems, no controversy. So why hasn't he been signed? Well, it's not a lack of interest, it's a lack of action. You see his name linked to clubs like Manchester United and Arsenal almost every other week. But here's the thing, no one has made a bid. Not last summer, not this summer. Sporting's president Frederico Varandas came out and said it. They haven't received a single official offer for Gyokeres. Now let's get into why. Because it's not as simple as he's too expensive or he's not good enough. The issue is what he's valued at, by whom, and how confusing that has become. So officially, Gyokeres has a €100 million release clause in his contract. That's about £85 million. But here's where the situation gets tricky. Last summer, his agent reportedly tried to negotiate a kind of gentleman's agreement with Sporting. The idea was, okay, we won't push for a move this year, but next year, if a good offer comes in, you'll let him go for less than the release clause. People assumed that meant €70 million, around £59 million, would be enough this summer, but that's not what Sporting agreed to, and Varandas made that crystal clear. He said there was never a promise to sell for 60 or 70 million euros. What was agreed, and this is important, was that Sporting wouldn't demand the full 100 million euros, but there was never a fixed number set in stone. No guaranteed exit fee, no pre-agreed discount, and this leaves Gyokeres in a weird limbo. Sporting doesn't want to give him away, and clubs don't want to pay 85 million euros for a striker from the Portuguese league, especially one who's only had one breakout season at this level. And look, that's not an unfair concern. Even though Darwin Núñez made a similar jump from Benfica to Liverpool and João Felix before that, the reality is that Gyokeres is older, and 27-year-olds rarely leave Portugal for nine-figure fees. Clubs look at age, resale value, and track record in top leagues, and suddenly 85 million euros starts to look like a lot. That's especially true for Arsenal and Manchester United, the two clubs that need a striker like him. Arsenal are trying to strengthen their midfield and possibly improve on the left wing. Manchester United needs wingers, defensive depth, and possibly a new goalkeeper. These clubs aren't swimming in money. They have budgets. They're being cautious. So when you've got a player like Gyokeres, as good as he is, sitting in Portugal with a vague price tag floating between 60 and 85 million pounds, it becomes a hard deal to justify. And then there's the fear of the unknown. He's still mostly been a one-league striker. He hasn't done it in the Premier League yet, and clubs are scared of getting burned, especially after spending big on players like Felix or even Núñez, where the return didn't match the hype immediately. So now Gyökeres is stuck in a no-man's land. Too good to ignore, too expensive to risk, and caught in a negotiation situation that has no clear path forward. But what if things shift? What if a move does happen? The question then becomes, where should he go? His first option is Arsenal. If Gyökeres were to leave Sporting, Arsenal feels like one of the most natural fits, at least on paper. You look at the way Mikel Arteta sets up his team, and it's hard not to imagine Gyökeres thriving there. Arteta's system is built around control, possession, and structured chaos in the final third. In that 4-2-3-1, you've got Saka on the right, a creative number 10 like Odegaard pulling strings, and usually Martinelli or Trossard on the left. But the missing piece, and everyone knows this, is the number 9. Nketiah and Gabriel Jesus have their strengths, but neither of them is clinical or consistent enough to truly complete the attack. That's where Gyökeres comes in. He wouldn't just give Arsenal goals, he'd give them something they don't currently have. A striker who can score, press, and bully defenders all at once. His ability to play with his back to goal would open space for Odegaard to operate. His pressing would suit Arteta's high defensive line. And when Saka cuts inside or Zinchenko inverts into midfield, you've got Gyökeres pulling defenders away or making the near post run. That changes everything in that front five. Also, Arsenal create a ton of chances, but they don't always finish them. That's been the biggest issue in title races. You bring in someone who scored 54 goals in one season, and suddenly those tight games look very different. But here's the issue, and it's a big one: timing. Right now, Arsenal have multiple priorities. They're actively working on midfield reinforcements, with Zubimendi heavily linked, and they're reportedly looking at wide forwards too. The budget isn't unlimited, and the left wing is a growing concern. Martinelli's dip in form last season means they might look for an upgrade or a more consistent alternative. So even though Gyökeres would fit Arsenal perfectly, They're not in a position to throw down £80 million on a striker when other parts of the squad are under construction, and unless Sporting comes down on their valuation, this move just might not happen. Not because of fit, but because of finances. And that's the frustrating part. Sometimes you've got the perfect player and the perfect system, but not the perfect moment. So if it's not Arsenal, what about Manchester United? But like with Arsenal, money is still an issue. United also has multiple squad holes to fix. They're trying to sign a left winger, possibly another right winger, and still need help in midfield and possibly at centre-back. If Amorim is appointed and that's still not confirmed, he might push hard for Gyokeres. But if they need to spend £80 million to make it happen, it's a risk the club might hesitate to take, especially with Premier League spending being more closely watched now due to FFP. Still, out of all the potential moves, this is the one that makes the most holistic sense. The manager knows the player knows the system, and the system suits the league. It's a win-win if they can afford it. But even if a move does happen, we need to ask something bigger. Will Gyokeres live up to the hype in the Premier League? Or is there a danger we're overrating one incredible season? This is the big question, because no matter how many goals you score elsewhere, the Premier League is a different beast. It's not just about talent, it's about consistency, physicality, pressure, and adaptation. And as good as Gyokeres has been, we have to ask, can he do it here? Let's break it down. First of all, the numbers are insane. You're talking about a striker who ended the season with 54 goals and 13 assists in 52 games across all competitions. That's more than a goal contribution per game. And he did that not just in the Portuguese league, but also in the Champions League, where he scored 6 goals in 8 matches, even though Sporting didn't make it past the group stage. That's elite output, no two ways about it. But the question Premier League clubs are asking isn't how many goals did he score, it's how he scores them. And more importantly, can those same chances be created and converted against Premier League level defenders? Gyokeres is not just a poacher. He's not someone who sits in the box and waits. What makes him dangerous is that he's incredibly active. He can carry the ball, hold off defenders, press like a monster, and most of all, he has the ability to create chances for himself. That's rare. And that's what separates him from other strikers who looked good in Portugal but didn't quite translate, like say Bas Dost or even Slimani. But here's the flip side. The Portuguese league, as good as it is, isn't as intense or fast-paced as the Premier League. You get more time on the ball. Defenders aren't as aggressive in transition. There's more space between the lines. Gyokeres has thrived in that environment. But what happens when that space disappears? What happens when you're playing against teams who sit deep and then press you relentlessly when you turn? And that's where the Darwin Núñez comparison comes in. Darwin came from Benfica with similarly eye-popping numbers, but when he arrived in England, it became clear that decision-making, composure, and finishing under pressure were still works in progress. He's improved, no doubt, but it's been rocky. With Gyökeres, it's the same risk. He's only had one truly elite season at this level. Before that, he was solid, but not world-class in the Championship with Coventry. So the sample size is small, and the jump is massive. That's what's making clubs hesitate. It's not about whether he's talented, it's about whether his style of play can scale and whether the price tag justifies the gamble. Because if you're going to drop £70 to £85 million on a striker, he can't just be good, he has to be transformative. So far, Gyokeres looks like he could be that kind of player. He has a physical profile, he has the numbers, he has the hunger, but until he's tested in one of the top 3 leagues, especially in the Premier League, we won't really know. And that's the frustration, because right now, he's in this awkward position. Too good to stay at Sporting, but just unproven enough to scare the big clubs away. But what do you think? Should any club take a big gamble? Well, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to check out our last video on how Ancelotti is about to change Brazil. Thank you.